that they just fabricated the charges against Christ. They're not bothered that they declared the Son of God the son of hell. They're not bothered that they killed the King of Glory, but they didn't want to violate the Sabbath. It didn't bother them that they just killed or were going to kill the Lord of the Sabbath. They went ahead with their plan. It reminds me of people who, they don't witness, they don't go to church, their home is not characterized by a pursuit of godliness, not trying to rear their children that way, but they do go to church occasionally and so forth. You're trying to live for God, and if you fail in some way, they're very quick to call you a hypocrite. They'll go to battle not for if you defame God or dishonor Christ or say something ungodly, but if you violate their priority, they'll come get you. It's like people who are more concerned about following Robert's Rules of Orders than they are about the Scripture. They're more interested in procedure than people, self than souls, and money than ministry. Their heart is riveted on the minors that they have made majors. It's like the old saying, they're very angered or upset or want to control what kind of bat you use, but they're not concerned whether you hit a home run or not. I think of family members or co-workers that know us best, and we're trying to live for God, and yet we do fail. But when we fail, they don't do anything. They claim they're a Christian. They don't do anything to really testify about that except a few words here and there. But the first time we mess up, they call us a hypocrite. John tells us that 100 pounds of myrrh and aloes were used, or aloes. And so they didn't use them for embalming like we do today or like the Egyptians. They used them for encasing you. And so 100 pounds was what was used for royalty. Then notice the place in verse 60 and 61. And they laid it, his body, in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out of rock. And he rolled a large stone against the entrance of the tomb and went away. And Mary Magdalene was there, and the other Mary sitting opposite the grave. So Joseph's tomb, their burial places, when they're talking about a tomb, were not like our grave site where it's dug into the ground 6 feet. It's not even like where they have a lot of different people buried in one building, but they were a tomb like a small cave. And so someone, a rich person, of course, would own one of these, as Joseph of Arimathea. So he carried the body of Jesus, he laid it in the tomb. Then, and in the front of it, they would cut a canal into the rock, and it would be on a decline. So they would take the rock that was now hewn into a rollable stone, and they would get several people and put it up before the door of the cave or the tomb, and they would roll it in front of the door. So it went downhill when they were putting it in front of the tomb, and you can see to remove it would be very difficult because it's a massive stone to keep animals and thieves out and so forth, but it would take a number of people to move the stone away. So they were protecting the one whom they had married or buried, and in this case is Jesus Christ. And then there would be a seal on it. So some of you have seen where somebody, a boss or somebody, has a seal that he puts on trucks that travel. They usually have them on the back and so forth to protect the goods inside. So there were seals at different levels, but the highest was the emperor's seal. So this would have been a Roman seal to show whether it was violated or not. So he was buried. He's dead. He can't do anything about what's going on. Like we get sometimes when we go through things and we can't do anything and we feel helpless. But God was there. And he wasn't passive either. In Exodus chapter 12, verse 6, they sacrificed the Passover lamb every year. And the Passover lamb would be sacrificed after they kept the lamb, and then they would sacrifice the lamb between the twilight, between 3 and 6 p.m. And that's the time that God judged our sin through this lamb on the cross. Isaiah chapter 53:9, he fulfilled the scripture of dying on the cross, being buried. It says his grave was assigned with wicked men, and yet he was with a rich man in death. He was with a rich man, Joseph of Arimathea, but he was buried with the criminals. He died like a criminal. He died with the criminals, and yet he was buried like nobility. God was in control. Even though Christ couldn't do a thing, he could not cause any of these people to choose to do A or B. He couldn't do anything. In Matthew chapter 12, verse 40, he spoke of the sign of Jonah being 3 days in the belly of a great fish or a great sea monster. And he said, so shall the Son of Man be in the belly of the earth. In Zechariah 12:10, it says that they would see him when he comes back in the second coming. They would see him and he would be pierced. And that's what John 19:34 records, that his side was pierced to let the blood run out so they wouldn't have to break his legs. Psalms 34:20 prophesied and promised that no bone would be broken. And again, John 19:32, they came breaking the legs, but with Christ, because he had been pierced in his side, that was not necessary. All of this he didn't have control over, but the Father did. And God works providentially in the hearts and the lives of other people, even unbelievers, to accomplish his purpose. When Jesus could do nothing, when Jesus could do absolutely nothing, the Father did everything. And the same is true with his children. In Philippians chapter 1, verse 16, for I am confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will complete it, will perfect it until that day. And that includes every day of life. You see, we go through something and we don't understand. And we hurt. We're confused. And we go to people and they can't answer it. We don't know. Like this, they were that way. Everybody that was a follower of Christ on this day. Joseph of Arimathea tells us in Mark 15:43, and he gathered up courage and went before Pilate. He's the one that went before Pilate and asked for the body, but notice he had to gather up courage because this was a risky thing and he knew the cost. But God was in control. And what was God doing? He was conforming those followers to the image of Christ. And you know what he's doing with us? Conforming us to the image of Christ. We are, once we become a believer, we are predestined to become conformed to the image of Christ. Part of it will happen in this life, and part of it will happen in the next life. Look at verse 61 again. And Mary Magdalene was there, and the other Mary sitting opposite the grave. Passing beauty of brevity. If you were reading this in a devotional or looking at the verses, yeah, there they were. Two Marys. Wonder who they were. But it wouldn't mean anything. But that's the Scripture's passing beauty of brevity. It says things sometimes very briefly, and yet it's profound truth. Two women just sitting there in sorrow. And when you look at them, and if we would have been there prior to the resurrection, nobody would have attributed significance to them being there. Why are they there? Coincidence. They're sad, so they're sitting crying. One thing we can say, they're not the cold, androgynous, feminist sort of woman today. The stone that would see and testify first to the resurrected Christ. They saw him. They saw it all. They alone. They saw it all. They saw the resurrection, as we'll look at for a moment in chapter 28, verse 1 here in Matthew. So these two ladies witnessed everything. They didn't have to become men to do that. As a matter of fact, if they would have missed it like the disciples did. But they just did what women do. Most of the time when you go through something, the significance of your going through it will not be known at that time. You continue walking with God and you will know it later. But it will not be known at that time. For there's no building of faith when you know instantly. You're being somewhere, you're going through something difficult, a great loss. You'll not know and understand